Okay, so we're going to go ahead and give a first attempt at this. As you can tell, I'm using state-of-the-art equipment, so of course it will be a perfect recording, and as I am the best instructor in the universe, I will of course have no questions because I'll explain everything perfectly. We're going to go over radiology and pathology. This week I'm going to make two separate videos for modifiers and an overview of the CPT book. I feel it's important that we kind of get off onto this week before we start moving on to previous videos, explanations, etc. My intent is to try to get those done by Thursday, but we'll see how well that goes. Before we dig into radiology, there's one concept that I want to explain that's essential and very, very key, and that's the difference between a technical component and a professional component. If a physician's office takes the picture, but they do not give a formal report, that is known as the technical component, and you would append a TC modifier to that radiology code. If, however, a physician's office does not take the film, but they do the professional report, the official report, then you would append a 26 modifier to the code, indicating that they were doing the professional side of it. If the physician's office does both, then you append no code. Alright? The only gotcha to that is that there are a handful of codes that say supervision and interpretation only. If it says supervision and interpretation only, you do not need to add the 26 modifier. So just be aware of that. Technical and professional component billing comes up a lot, so expect that to be tested. Okay, as we go through the radiology section, notice how it's organized. It has particular sections, and then within that, these red areas are anatomical sites. So it's pretty easy to find a code if you know A, what test is being done, and B, where it's being done at. One thing I want to highlight after you get past the table of contents is notice this green page. It kind of shows up as a very light green in the video. Read these. These will give you hints and tips about how to find the correct code, so it's essential that you understand it. You don't need to read the individual codes. I'm talking about these paragraphs before it, to the side. These you want to be familiar with because they explain the concepts that you need to know to select the correct code. As we go through radiology, you'll notice that most of it is code. There is not a lot of descriptive text until you get to the heart. You notice this is the heart section. About 2/3 of it has a narrative. Read through this. It will give you guidance, again, on selecting the correct code within the heart area. Again, for vascular procedures, there's one for aortas and arteries, and then one for veins and lymphatics. Read these sections. Again, not the individual codes. Don't worry about those. You'll get plenty of exposure to those. But read the text that's before it. Transcatheter procedures also has its own little section that you'll want to read, as well as diagnostic ultrasound. As you read through this section, notice where it's actual text like this. Read this and become familiar with it. This will help you immensely. And then if you have any questions, feel free to email me through Angel or directly to my accounts. And that's pretty much it. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is you'll see a lot of codes where it says with contrast material, without contrast material. The key there is it doesn't say assume that it's without. Only code contrast material if it specifically says with contrast material. I think that will do it. That will help you the most as we go through this. When we get to lab data, okay, the biggest concept with labs that I want to bring up is panels. And right before I do that, again, notice this section. Read any text that you see that's not a code. They're there to help you. This is what's called a panel. You'll notice, and it doesn't show up real well in the video, so I'll do my best to explain it, but 80047 is a basic metabolic panel. And underneath of that it says this panel must include the following, and then it gives a list of tests, and in parentheses next to that test is a separate CPT code that this panel includes. So if you're going through a whole list of codes that are lab codes, and you notice they all fall within a particular panel. Code the panel, not the individual labs. You'll save yourself a great deal of trouble and headache. I can tell you from personal experience, this is tested on the CPC exam, so you will want to become familiar with panels. And they will test you on what panels you can use. If they give you a set of codes, they will also test you if you can use a panel by giving you codes, and you have to make sure that all those individual codes are in the panel. Similarly, towards the back in surgical pathology, let me find it here real quick. This rate will be there next week. Surgical pathology has a similar thing where they have different levels of pathology. Level 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to level 6. Okay? When you're given the option for doing surgical pathology, the way you go about it is you find where the organ is, where the biopsy was done, and wherever that organ is, you go back to the code, and that's the level that you're going to code it as. So for example, if somebody comes in with a biopsy off of, make this up here, off their colon, okay, colon biopsy is in a level 4, so you would code it 88305. Alright? One thing you'll have to be careful of is things like soft tissue and skin, because they're scattered throughout the levels. So for example, skin, in level 2 there's a skin plastic repair. In level 3 there's a skin cyst tag debridement. In level 4, skin other than cyst tag debridement or plastic repair. And then there's nothing in level 5 or level 6. So be aware of that, be cognizant of it, and this should help you do this week's assignments. If you have any questions, email me and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.